Today on Pots and Trowels we're talking about bulbs and how to get the best out of them for a lovely spring display in your garden. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. We're right in the middle of the bulb planting season at the moment, and I always like to think that the majority of the bulbs, the spring flowering bulbs, your daffodils, your narcissus, crocuses, snowdrops, all those lovely spring flowering bulbs, we've got them in the ground by the end of October. So we've got a couple of weeks left yet. Now it's autumn, the leaves are falling, it's starting to feel very autumnal. So what I thought we'd do today is just have a little chat about getting the best out of your bulbs to make sure they get off to a good start and you get a lovely display next year. Lots of bulbs, of course, can be planted in the garden, and then you can also grow them in pots. So we'll talk briefly about them both. First thing is, if you haven't got your bulbs, get out and get them quickly. They're still in garden centres and nurseries, so you can get them, but get good quality bulbs. It's all about the size with a bulb. The bigger the bulb, the better it will be. If you buy tiny, wizened little bulbs, they will probably grow, but you won't get flowers next year. So here I've just got a few, and I've got some lovely crocus here. I love crocus. These flower sort of February and early March, always in flower on my birthday. Just thought I'd remind you when my birthday is. And these are lovely. These are lovely corms here, nice and plump. They're just starting to show a bit of a shoot, so they're perfect now for getting in the ground, but they're plump and they're firm, just what we want. Likewise with these tulips here, these are good sized bulbs. These will flower next year. They've got a nice dry outer skin there, which is a good healthy sign on them, and they feel firm. Likewise with these daffodils, this is a miniature, so it is a small bulb because it's a miniature one, but again they're firm and they're just starting to shoot, which again tells me they want planting. And then we've got these big alliums here. Love alliums in the garden, and perfect for planting at this stage because again they're just getting ready to grow. I can see the roots, so we need to make sure we get them in. That is really important. Now if you're planting in the garden, it's also important that you get them in at the right depth, and as a general guide with all of these spring flowering bulbs, we want to plant them 3 times the depth of the bulb. So if I hold that trowel there to give you an idea, this is an allium bulb. If I put that allium bulb there, this trowel isn't 3 times the depth, it's actually only twice the depth, so that would be no good for planting it. I'd need to plant it with something bigger, maybe a spade like this, which is ideal. And if I hold the spade there and hold the allium, we can see that's 1 depth, 2 depth, 3 depth. So that would be about the depth of the hole that you would need to put a bulb of that size in. So that is really important, and remember that with all the bulbs. But then obviously if you're planting things like this little crocus here, we only need the hole to be a couple of inches deep. So we can plant with a trowel like this, which is perfect, or if you've got soft soil, then you can use one of these bulb planters that you just push into the cultivated soil, take it out, and then you can pop in the bulbs and away you go. And this has actually got measurements on there, 5 centimetres and 10 centimetres, just as a guide. If in doubt, it's always better to plant slightly deeper than too shallow, because then you're not going to damage them when you're cultivating in the garden and digging and things. And if you're planting in lawns and you want to naturalise some bulbs, then these are quite good as well. You just push them in. Takes a core of soil in there. When you push it in the second time, that one pops out, and then you can pop it back in the first hole, and you just put your bulbs in obviously underneath. So planting outside in the garden, get on with it when the soil conditions are good. Not everybody wants to put them in the garden, or if you haven't got a garden, if you've only got a balcony or a patio, you can still get a lovely display in the spring by growing in pots. Now when it comes to what type of pot, doesn't really matter. It's whatever you like and what fits in with the style of your garden. I like terracotta because it's nice and heavy, it isn't going to blow over in the wind, and I just think it looks natural. It fits in with the sort of style of gardening I like. But you could use the lead look-alike resin pots, stone effect pots. Plastic's absolutely fine. Bulbs aren't that fussy, so it really is up to you what you use. But what is important is that you make sure that the pots have got drainage holes in the bottom, and that you use some crocks or gravel over them, just so that the drainage hole doesn't block with compost, because all bulbs hate to be in really wet, waterlogged conditions. So that's something that we need to bear in mind when we're planting. And the shape and size of the pot is up to you. I tend to use lower pots for short bulbs just because I think they look a bit better. And if you've got some really tall bulbs, like these alliums are going to produce these long stems with big pom-pom heads on, then maybe a taller pot, something like that, would be ideal for them. So really easy. I'll just plant a couple of pots up just to show you how we do it. So this is a small, quite a shallow pot, so I'm going to put some shallow bulbs in there. I've got my piece of crock over there like that, and then we need some compost. Any multi-purpose will do. This is actually a bulb planting compost that's sort of a bracken and base and sheep's wool, but you know, a multi-purpose is fine. They don't need putting too much compost in there. I'm getting carried away. They don't need too much in the way of nutrients. So I'm going to fill that maybe half full of the compost, and then here I've got the crocus. So as you can see, they're going to then be covered with a good depth of compost over the top, and I'm just going to space those around. Now this pot is probably 5-6 inches in diameter, so there's no point just putting 2 or 3 in. They're going to be lost. We want a decent display of these crocus. This is a lovely deep purple one with a nice big flower head in. So the rule is put them in fairly tight, but try to keep them so they're not touching, so there's just a small gap like that. So in that pot I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 bulbs in there, and then it's simply just a case of cover those over with some of the compost to the top. If the compost's moist, they don't really need a drink, but if it's a bit on the dry side, just give them one drink. That will just bring them to life. The roots will start to grow, and they'll be absolutely fine. So that's as simple as that. Another way you can do it is to plant in a slightly deeper pot. So I've got this one here. So again, it's got a big drainage hole in the bottom. So I'm just going to put a couple of crocks over that to block it. And then I'm going to put just a little bit of compost in the bottom. Now, some of you may remember last year we planted a lasagna pot where we planted bulbs in layers. We had tulips at the bottom, then we had daffodils above it, and iris on top of that. And they grew at different times of the year. We had flowers in March, April and May, and I've left that to see what happens again this year. So this is not a lasagna pot, but I'm going to plant in layers. So what I'm going to do here, I've only about a third filled my pot to there, and I'm going to plant this lovely dwarf narcissus, and this is a really lovely one. It's got a yellow centre with cream outers, looks very much like the wild daffodil that you will see, but I want this pot to be a mass of colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 layers of bulbs in the pot like this. So I'm just going to spread them around the pot and just gently push them in like that, and then just a couple in the middle, just as we did with the crocus. And so they've all got a bit of space around them, and then I'm going to cover those over with some of the compost. Not too much, I'm just going to do it until they virtually disappear, and I don't want to damage any of those shoots. So put those there like that, and then I'm going to put another layer of the same type of bulb. So this isn't a mixture, these are all the same dwarf narcissus, and the idea is that this bulb bowl, when it flowers, will be a mass, and what will happen is the ones below will just push up through the gaps. It's amazing how they find the gap and grow through it. The lower ones will be slightly shorter maybe than the top ones, but that gives you an even fuller bulb, so it looks really impressive. Just to finish off, we're going to cover that over with some more of the compost up to the top. So narcissus start to root straight away, so within a few weeks they'll be producing lovely roots, and then what will happen is we'll get the shoots out there, and these will flower sort of end of March, April time, but we'll get masses of flowers instead of just doing that single layer of bulbs in there. So all of these bulbs you can put in now. So certainly if you've got snowdrops, you've got chamaesyas, you've got alliums, you've got crocuses, daffodils, they can all be put in the garden or in pots. If you've got tulips, it's getting to the planting time, but normally we wait until the ground's a bit cooler. So traditionally it's November. to put them in the garden, but if you're putting them in pots, that's absolutely fine. So they've got a bit longer to plant. You can certainly plant them all the way through November, even into December. So get your bulbs in, don't leave them in a bag. They're never going to grow in a bag in your shed or your garage, and I've done it myself. I've bought them at autumn flower shows, and then you find them the following spring all sprouted, and they're no good. So you must get them in over the next couple of weeks, and then you can enjoy them. And one final tip, some people are bothered by squirrels, and squirrels love bulbs, especially tulips and crocuses. They absolutely love them. They're a delicacy, and they will dig down and get them out. So if that's a problem, then it's worth getting yourself just a piece of netting like this, and just put that over the pot. Just bend it down and just leave that there so that the squirrels can't dig down into the compost and get their bulbs. They'll start to grow through it, but then when they are ready to flower or before they get too big, you can just simply lift that off. They won't bother them then. You'll get the lovely display without any squirrel damage. So there you go. Get planting your bulbs and enjoy them next spring. Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels, and thank you again for all your likes and shares. And remember, you can find everything on YouTube or Facebook, going back to all the videos that we've done, including the lasagna planting. Next time, I'm going to be out with my secateurs doing a bit of pruning around the garden. So we'll see you then. Bye.